Roger, he's having a look. And I might as well say good morning to everybody else. This is Gulf Harbour Radio, ZMH 286, to get the formalities over with. Patricia and David on a beautiful, beautiful, crispy morning here. Not a cloud in the sky. The moon's still quite high. It's absolutely glorious. Just about one knot of easterly, 10 degrees now. So not very wonderful temperature-wise, but certainly beautiful. For everything else, we have 1020.6. It looks as if it's trying to rise, but I'm not sure about that. Fairly steady on the barometer.
Do you want to? Yeah,
David's going to talk to Villamy now, and anyone who is approaching Fiji in the weekend will probably want to listen. So Villamy is at 25 and 178 east, we'll call it. Here's David.
Yeah, good morning, Trevor and Jan, and looking at Saturday morning at dark 30, looking at, it's about 5 a.m. So south of Kendavu, oh, by the way, where are you checking in? Over. Okay, directly south of Kendavu, at that time, very early, there's quite a bit of wind. It looks like east northeast, just slightly north of east. Let's put it that way. Not severely northeast at that point, but it's fairly fresh, about 25 knots. Now, moving you along around lunchtime, it stays the same. It actually, at Kendavu, it turns easterly. And then the winds between Kendavu and Suva, well, let me back up a little bit. What's happening is there's a trough that's running through there, so you're going to be in the middle of that trough that we talked about. Now, the front itself joins the trough, so it's sort of a T-bone effect. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So you've got sort of a double whammy, but the point is that you are going to have cloud and rain because of this. So the winds, though, like I said, around the Kendavu area are easterlies. Now, because of the front, what's feeding the front are winds to the north of it. And so all those winds at Vanua-Levu, the northern Lao, northern Usawas, they're northerly winds. And so those northerlies go right into the Koro Sea and probably around the Suva area. So somewhere between Kendavu and Suva, by lunch on Saturday, you'll have a wind shift. And when they go north, it won't be too bad, simply because you've got that big island landmass that's there. And looking at around dinner time, the band looks like it lifts a little bit. So the easterlies are now north of Kendavu, and possibly southeast getting into Suva, but very light. By midnight, the winds around the Suva area look to be northeast. Very close in, they're not too bad. You get a little bit of protection in there, the way that the land sticks out on the eastern side. South of there, though, it's fresh, about 20 knots. And then looking at Sunday morning, if you don't get in Saturday, the winds from below Kendavu, and the area between Kendavu and Suva are all northeast. And they're going to be in the 20 knot range, a little bit further to the east, they're 25 knots, quite strong. But in that rum line between Kendavu and Suva, a little bit less wind, but northeast. And that's very early in the morning. Then by about lunchtime, it backs even more. So it's northeast and maybe even northeast. But once you get in close to Suva, it'll drop off quite a bit because of the protection. And the same applies to around dinner time on Sunday. The winds could actually be northwest, but 5 knots. You've got a big wind shadow. So if you can get up in there as fast as you can, you'll get protection from those northerlies. So that's what it's doing late Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, David. It's very comprehensive and it sounds all right. I think as long as we can maintain the speed we're doing, I think we'll get in all right on this. Might be a bit windy, but it's be from an all right direction, so that's all right. Thanks a lot, David.
Yep, and I'll be interested in getting your reports to see how accurate this actually turned out to be. We'll be on the radio again tomorrow, so call again and we'll see if anything has changed. Over.
Yep, okay, we'll do that right away. If you're not away over the weekend, we'll just send you an email or whatever you have. Thanks, David.
Alrighty, and the microphone is finally back to me. I'm not sure that I'm going to let loose with the microphone if we're going to have weather at this time of the morning. Actually, where he did a good comparison of all the models yesterday, and the only one that didn't match up with anything was Obsession. So Obsession, if you could just check what you told us yesterday with your Southeast, we just absolutely couldn't find any models that agreed with you yesterday, so it'd be interesting for you just to confirm. But today they're reporting south-southeast, so we'll see how that goes. All right, and good morning to everybody. It's interesting having this comparison of all the models, and thanks to Non-Stop, they've got a good match with GFS and EC today, and they're down at 30 and 179 west with southeast 7 to 11. So good, everything's actually very, very mild looking everywhere. And just talking about Suva, and I know you guys have often been into Suva, Villamy, so you will know that you can just talk to the Suva Yacht Club, Royal Suva Yacht Club, to get the okay to just sit in the bay there or harbour there for the weekend and check in on Monday without any overtime costs. I will get that good report from Alcyon on the website today. And just a reminder for those out there who have joined us recently, some of the ones still waiting to leave, we do have our own website now, www.ghradio.co.nz, and all your weather and communication stuff is now on there with the different weather papers, and the YIT site remains the same for all your position reports and the like. Actually, an interesting report from Pilgrim. They took a dinghy ride to Kavala yesterday and report that the carver in there, it's a very well-stocked shop by the sound of it, and it's $40 cheaper than its Suva market. It's $110 a kilo. That's an awful lot. Boy, even fish here is only $35 a kilo. $110 a kilo for carver at the market, but it is cheaper, so I suppose that's a good thing.
How much for marijuana?
I won't repeat what David just asked, how much for marijuana. All right, moving on to other reports. They're all fairly light, actually. Good morning to Whangarei, where they've actually got a few clouds up there. Good morning, Eagles Winds. And there is a bit of wind up there in the Asawas. Mesa Troy have got 15 knots of easterly, but a very lovely morning. And everywhere else, Vanuatu looks very peaceful and tranquil. Even Sarani up there on the northern side of New Caledonia, it's a very light southwest land breeze. So no one's really got an awful lot at the moment. Cousteau there, where I think Whistler have taken up residence, 5 to 10 knots of east-southeast. Fusio are going into Minerva. I'm glad it's a little bit of light, and of course that full moon would have made it easy. Cloud cover is about 10%, 12 knots of east-southeast. So no problems getting into Minerva. I wouldn't mind hearing from why, if you could let me know that you safely arrived at South Minerva and got out again, I presume. So we wouldn't mind hearing about that. All right, I'm going to have a pause here because we've got a few boats on passage, and I will try and find a flying cloud in a moment, but I know Cobalt is a good signal. Cobalt, Gulf Harbour.
We've got wind 15, 16 knots of easterly, 60, Dusty, which is just 12 above and east of the south
Okay, sounds pretty pleasant out there. You're just a little bit behind actually behind and further away longitude-wise, 2655 and 17112 east, and they've got 60% cloud cover and 15 knots from the east. So really nice sailing there, and I presume all is well on board. Over.
Yes, thank you very much. Well on board, we're hoping to arrive in the future tomorrow afternoon. So talk to you tomorrow. Many thanks. Take one now.
Okay, Aneesham tomorrow, so you'll be there for the weekend, hopefully. And hopefully there's not a cruise ship in, much more pleasant without everybody along the beach there. Okay, let's see if I can find Excel. Oh no, I'm going to, yeah, that's a good idea. Excel, go ahead. Nothing heard from Excel. I was hoping that they would be there. Never mind. Gracious lady, are you still near Cobalt? Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yes, we're not too far away. Our position is 2300 17004. We're doing a stop. Area code of 330.
Okay, 330 magnetic, and that makes me wonder whether I got the Cobalt course correct, because I missed the first digit. I'm going to go back to you in a minute. 330 magnetic and 6 knots, a very good signal today. What your conditions are pretty much the same, over? All right, thank you for that, and you're doing pretty well too. So I'll clear with you. I'll just go back to Cobalt. Could you repeat your course, please? Over.
Error. 350.
Okay, I should have said that out. So I got the 50, and I thought, 350 true. That makes a lot more sense towards Aneesham. So thank you for that. All right, so we'll clear with Cobalt and Gracious Lady, and I think we'll try and find Flying Cloud, just to check all is well. Nothing heard there. How about Toranui? It's very strange. We normally have Graham on quite early. Heatwave. All right, I am going to do a bit of a roundup of news, and then I'm going to ask Pilgrim to see if, actually, probably we'll wait till after the weather to round up the boats that I haven't heard from. Although I could just give a call. Is there anybody else that wants to check in? Okay, there are a couple of votes there. One of them, I think, was Y. Go ahead, Y.
Yeah, morning, Patricia. North Minerva, okay. The Tongan Navy kicked everybody out of South Minerva, over.
Oh, that's very interesting. What was the reason for that, over?
Live firing in the lagoon. They had a group of boats turning up to do practice. 48-hour closure of South Minerva.
Oh, that's very interesting. I suppose it's a good reason to leave, isn't it? Okay, so no boats can go into South Minerva for 48 hours, I guess, starting yesterday, because of a live firing exercise for the Tongan Navy. Wow.
Patricia, I hope they're aiming south.
Yeah, I hope David says he hopes they're aiming south. All right, well, thank you for that. So you're amongst the North Minerva people. All right, so, but presumably you got in no problem with that nice big moon, over?
Yeah, no problem at all, Patricia. Got us gold, and we'll be here for a couple of days, so probably give you a call Saturday morning.
Okay, we won't be on Saturday morning. A good reminder to tell everybody we are going AWOL for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, heading down to Hahei in the Coromandel. So we will not be here Saturday morning, but anybody who emails in, I will update things on Yurt if you are not there. But and anyone who wants a bit of weather, you could probably email David, because we're going to be swamped with rain down there. It's not going to be a brilliant weekend, but we'll be away and enjoying Hot Water Beach and those sorts of places. There was a couple of people in behind Y. I'm not sure who they were. Who was that? Okay, we've got Amazing Grace, and your report has come in. So is there anything else over? Amazing Grace, go ahead.
David, how do you read the alert?
I read you well, and I've just noticed that your report was 13 hours old. So go ahead, John, and I will take it down.
Well, if you got my report, I just sent it off. It was a little late for the next half. We're getting ready to go into Sabu this afternoon. We're about 34 miles out from the end of today. Other than that, I can give you some weather if you want that.
Well, I've got your report just come in, so we'll probably just go with that. Thanks, John. And yeah, enjoy Savu. Sounds like you've had a pretty decent trip from Minerva, over.
Yeah, we had ups and downs from Minerva, but last night was a magical night. We got a great lake sail. Weather is south. 1011 on the bar, and we got a south front of the view. So everything is doing nice. It's about 50% cloud cover right now.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've just documented all of that. It sounds an absolutely lovely way to end a passage, and I know you'll enjoy Savu. So it sounds pretty busy now, though, in Savu. What with various filmings going on and the like. So, yep, enjoy Savu, and good morning to Leilani. All right, I'm just going to very quickly go through a couple of news items. One of them is quite funny, actually. A Tesla sedan on autopilot has crashed into a parked police car in California. I can't imagine sitting in a car and having it on autopilot, but there you are. Singapore Airlines, by the way, if people want to go a bit faster than sailing, they are going to, in October, have the longest flight in the world, 19 hours almost, 18:45 minutes to be precise, from Singapore to New York. Can you imagine being stuck in an aeroplane for that length of time, 18 hours, 45 minutes?
Get a mortgage on your house
Yeah.
and go first class.
Yeah, go get a mortgage on your house and go first class. Yeah, they have beautiful beds in Singapore Airlines. This is the new Airbus A350. So anyway, another funny bit of news, actually. Well, it was funny at the start. They reported with great drama yesterday that a journalist in the Ukraine, in Kiev, had been shot dead multiple times in his apartment, and he was very critical of Mr. Putin's philosophy towards Ukraine and many other things. And it turns out that that was all a hoax. Fake news, just as Mr. Trump has reported, fake news. And Kilauea, of course, is still spouting an enormous amount of lava. Now, it's actually going rather quickly. 37 homes have been evacuated now. There are 24 cracks in the mountains spouting lava. So it's actually quite dramatic. Some fantastic pictures coming from Kilauea. Well, I better pass over the microphone because I know there's a lot of weather to talk about, especially for those that are passaging. About time you showed up, but I'm going to still pass the microphone, Graham, and pick you up afterwards, if that's all right. Over.
Too bad you're late. All right, good morning, everybody. And a quick look at 500 millibar for today shows that our ridge has moved east just a little bit. We talked about this skinny little ridge over New Zealand with no air, really. Very, very flat calm here. Anyhow, the axis is in the mid-Tasman, while the shortwave trough axis is just east of the Australian coast. So there is quite a bit of action there in the Tasman. Now, a substantial ridge is found in the Bight. And when I say the Bight, I'm always talking about the Australian Bight. which is the southern part of Australia for those that are new to the Southwest Pacific. Now, under this ridge, we have a very strong high that's forming at central pressure, about 1032 millibar, and I was hoping that the upper ridge would move to the Tasman by Monday, bringing with it a very nice, lovely surface high, and thus give yachts that are eager to leave Monday some decent conditions. But I am afraid I have to report that this isn't going to happen. A big disappointment here. Nearly all of the models show that Monday to be a no-go. So if you are planning on Monday, you may want to think twice. Now, things can change, but that's the way it appears at this point. Now, this is also Queen's birthday, and I suppose for celebrations, she's getting a present in the form of a very nasty depression. It's wound up, really wound up. It'll be centered over North Cape. This may very well turn out to be a complex depression, in other words, with a couple of centers. Wind on Tuesday will, in the Opua area, leaving Opua, will be west to southwest, about 30 knots. Now, by Wednesday, our Oz high finally makes its appearance in the Tasman. So instead of Monday, it looks like it's going to happen on Wednesday. It still is about a 1032, projected to be a 1032, and fresh winds, of course, between it and the low, the complex low, if you're traveling north. And they're all westerly quadrant winds, westerly quadrant. Probably 30 knots all the way up to 30 south. So some of you may not care about that and go anyhow, but just to let you know, that's probably going to be pretty rough. Now, still a depression center remains over New Zealand on Thursday. Remember I said it was a complex low. So this little center is going to be near East Cape. At least that's the way it looks right now. The other center is a little bit further to the east. So that means favorable winds right up to 25 south. Now they're all cyclonic and they're westerly quadrant. And generally cyclonic winds, in other words, westerly quadrant winds for the most part, there's going to be a fair amount of convective activity in the system. So even though that direction of wind is okay for making your way north for the most part, it still could be pretty sporty when you encounter squalls. Anyhow, it's still looking okay direction-wise through Sunday the 10th. Actually fairly light air from 20 to 25 south then, maybe a motor on that day. And it very well could be okay right through Thursday the 14th. So that's the early story for next week. So in other words, we'd say that maybe there's a chance to leave on Wednesday, being somewhat conservative. And maybe is the operative word. A lot can change between now and then. So we'll wait and see how things shake out come Monday when we get back. Now, for the yachts that are underway now, at around 30 south, you can expect southerly quadrant winds, mostly light air in the 10 knot range, and that could vary depending upon the cloud that you have around you. Satellite imagery does show plenty of scattered cloud, actually, also plenty of sunshine gaps. Now, by midnight, the winds, I would say, south to southeast, east of the date line, and then east to east northeast if you're west of the date line. Up at 25 south today, east to east southeast about 10 to 15, and the direction and speed actually depends on your longitude. At 20 south, you could expect east to southeast 15 to 20. And by the way, these are all UK Met model data that I'm giving you, so you can compare what I just said with the GRIBs that I know you're getting. Now, by lunch on Friday at 30 south, you could expect southeast winds at 175 west, east of the date line, in other words. But west of there, the winds are going to shift to the northeast as that frontal band approaches. And at 25 south, we've got northeast winds west of the dateline, easterly quadrant east of the dateline. So the direction's virtually the same at 20 south, but the winds are going to pick up about 15 to 20 and maybe higher. Now the frontal band would be pretty much over Vanuatu moving toward Fiji, and it's got 20 knot northeasterlies that are driving into the east side of the frontal band. And early Saturday, the frontal band, it's a nice long one. It's over New Zealand, naturally, the weekend, and it runs all the way up to Fiji, as I mentioned to Trevor earlier. And in addition to that, we have an active trough that's covering Tonga and Fiji, and it goes on to the Banks, the Santa Cruz Islands, and up to the Solomons. Winds from 30 south to 22 south and east of this front are going to be north, northeast, northeast, and quite fresh. In fact, in squalls, you could expect the usual 30 to 35 or more knots. Now, how the front meets the trough, if you could picture a T-bone steak, the vertical part of the T would be the cold front, and the horizontal part of the T is the trough. And this is very common to have that happen. They link up, and they tend to, like I've said many times, accentuate one another. Now on satellite imagery, you could, well, apart from the front and the trough that I just mentioned, there is a secondary trough, and that parallels the first one, so that they're moving. Those troughs are basically east-west, and that is what this one is doing as well. And it runs from the equator at 160 east, so way up there, and then it heads sort of southeast over Rotuma, and then on to Wallis. Then it comes pretty close to Samoa. Actually, Samoa is going to see showers and probably thunderstorms out of this. And then it goes on to the southern coast. Now for Tonga, and I know Toranui wants to hear this, the first trough lies rather weak and broken over the north. So scattered cloud is evident on satellite imagery. Most of it's moving actually northwest to southeast. So New Potatoes, or Nui Tupatapu, is sort of in the middle of all this, and it's going to see some rain. But Vavau, and just south of Vavau, I'm figuring on just scattered cloud, chance of a shower or two, but the main part of the trough is further north. Now there's a stronger chance for showers for Vavau tomorrow on Friday, and that includes the Hapais as well. But better weather if you're down there at Tongatapu. Now winds by lunch today for Tonga appear to be southeast 10 to 12 for the Hapais and southeast 15 to 20 for Vavau. By dinner, I would expect about 20 knots in both areas, similar direction. Now more wind on Friday. Vavau could expect southeast about 25 in the early morning hours, and then easing a bit, maybe 20 knots by lunch. So anyhow, call for more details, and I'm sure we'll hear from Toranui. Fiji, moving over there, is getting some cooler weather that we here at Gulf Harbor are gladly sending your way. Believe me, it's really cold down here, and that's being picked up by these southerly winds and getting up to Fiji, cooling it off a little bit. So as mentioned, we've got a trough just to the north, but that's projected to drift south to affect the group later today into tomorrow. And I told you already what's going to happen over the weekend. Satellite imagery does show plenty of scattered cloud already over Fiji, so we're getting quite a bit of activity preceding this trough. Now, Fiji winds today mostly east-southeast, getting up to 20 knots. However, there are plenty of wind shadow areas around the island, so if you're in a protected area, you'll have very little wind, and it should be quite nice. Now, about the same thing tomorrow, although the rest to the west, rather, of Kindavu and to the southwest of Viti Levu, expect about 25 knots. Then very close to Viti Levu, as you get closer, it drops off considerably. So again, you get into that wind shadow affair. And then, as I mentioned on the weekend, as those winds start to trend northerly quadrant, then that huge island gives a lot of protection for Suva and anywhere along the south coast, really. Okay, moving on, scattered cloud for Vanuatu. The southern trough edge, though, is about over the banks. Some heavier cloud is evident also this morning over Anisham to Tanna. Winds will be in east to southeast in the 15-knot range right around lunchtime today, and southeast tomorrow, I think, and it looks like about 10 to 15 knots, so not a whole lot of wind for Vanuatu. And Newcastle looks pretty good, scattered cloud here and there. Winds in the southern lagoon, mostly northeast. This includes Havana Pass and Ile de Pan. And tomorrow, you'll see east, well, no, this is for today, in the western lagoon, in other words, south of Noumea and further west than that, you'll see east-northeast winds. Now, it's a different story tomorrow morning. There's going to be a big wind shift. That'll be westerlies, and I would say maybe west-northwest for Ile de Pan and Havana Pass. Now, by lunch, winds in the southern lagoon are going to shift to light westerlies, but southwest for Ile de Pan. Now, that pretty much concludes what I've got. I'll give it back to the chief, and we'll pick up Toranui. And I was going to give you a little bit of a heads up on the models that I've been looking at. And should I do that today, or
Might as well.
do it tomorrow?
Do
Okay.
it today.
Okay, we'll take some boat calls now, and then when we're done, if you stay on the radio, I'll go over some of the things I'm doing with model comparison and looking at grids and wind arrows and that kind of a thing. So, Toranui, come on now.
Ooh, we should have got you before, I guess, because you're very light, but I'm sure I can read you. Go ahead, Graham. Okay, you're on the approach to Niafu. That's great. You'll be in there today and enjoying a good sleep tonight. So, well done. Actually, pretty good passage over.
The whole way. A beautiful sailing over.
Oh, fantastic. So, and nice timing to get in there too. Well done. All right. Good morning to you, Lynn, and enjoy it there, and you can wait the rest of the family. I'll just very quickly tell you where Revilo is, or Revelo. They are this morning, he's gone back to his old way of reporting, 2823 and 17859 west. Pretty good sailing too, 10 knots of south-southeast now, 1 metre seas. So still got a fairly big swell, and had to motor all night to stop the flopping of the sails and the big swells, but they're making good progress over. Alrighty, clear with Toranui. I haven't heard from, let's see, Heatwave and Rapaki. I might need help from somebody with Rapaki. Heatwave. Yeah, go ahead, Sue. Leo, we're getting a bit late for this. I need the latitude again, the latitude and the wind speed. Oh, I thought I heard 4 knots. That's very light, isn't it? So I think you are 26, but I'm still not getting that second digit of latitude. Over. Boy, it is disappearing on me. Could somebody confirm 2 whatever from Heatwave? Oh, not as fast as I thought they were. 2834. Thanks, Ron 17936 and southeast of 4. So I presume the motor's on. 5.5 knots. Thanks for the report. Southeast swell 10%. So 1019. Ron, are you still copying us? Okay, over.
Roger, I've got an excellent copy on you. We did that anchor in the afternoon, and I believe Flying Cloud is the island. They reported that they were in sight of it yesterday morning.
Ah, okay, so they are in fact at River Bay. That's excellent. Thank you for that, because they disappeared on me at the end of their. Actually, quite a few of you disappear at the end of your transmission, which indicates that the old power to the radio is dropping a bit, so might need a bit of a thicker cable from the battery. So anyway, thanks for that. Both of those I will put in. And Toranui's anchored at Niafu. Would you give a call to Rapaki, please? Rapaki, over.
Roger, will do, and thank you to also probably looking for a report. Rapaki, this is Silver for Del Mar, the new copy. I have you loud and clear, Rapaki. Go and get your report.
Is the copy still good enough to do
Yes,
this?
she's copied as well.
Roger, copy Rapaki at 3008 Bell, 17840 on the 45024 through at 5 knots.
Northerly 5 knots.
Roger with a northerly at 5 knots. All copy Patricia.
Yeah, you're coming in really well, and I got the northerly 5, but nothing before that, so it's just on the cusp of change there. Thank you. David's just looking over my shoulder on that one. And I suspect it was XL that we're looking for. XL, any copy? Ron, I'm going to have to leave it with you because I can barely copy anything. Did you copy XL?
Negative the Flying Cloud there.
Okay, Flying Cloud, if you could give us your initial reports from River Bay and Ron will relay. Go ahead, Flying Cloud. Walter.
You just don't get Rapaki's wind.
North 5, he's motor sailing.
You skewed the wind. Go
ahead, Ron. Okay, northwesterly 10. Thank you for that. Yeah, David's just a bit confused about the report from Peter on Rapaki with his north 5, but I guess it's sort of fairly variable. Actually, before I pass the microphone back and see if there's anybody else, I just wanted to report we've had some kava costs reported. La Toka and Nandi, thanks Diego, 130 to 150 Fiji dollars. And Suva is mentioned, 150, and Kavala, 110 from Pilgrim. So, yeah, you're in a good place. You should stock up, Ron, over. Mind you, you never know whether the scales are working well, do you? That's a suspicious thing to say, isn't it? Was there anybody else before I pass the microphone back to David?
It's Bella.
Oh, there she is. Go ahead. Good copy.
Good morning, Godfather. It's Bella. Position this morning, 28 degrees, 5 south, 179 degrees, 18 west. We're doing a speed of around 3 to 4 knots sailing. And we've got some like
Yeah, I must have turned away from the microphone. Could you give me the wind, the south-southeast wind strength again, over?
6 knots,
Alrighty, 6 knots, and you're doing 3 to 4 in which direction?
30 degrees, over.
Okay, 030. Got all of that. Thank you very much. Good signal from you down there at 2855. All right, I am going to go back to looking up the latitude and longitude of Rarotonga, where we have Margarita, and I'm going to pass the microphone. Here's David.
All right. Again, I want to thank all the yachts for being good about sending in their wind reports over the last couple of days. I spent all day yesterday examining every single one of them, and I do appreciate it. So what I've done is I've taken a variety of models, and they include GFS, ECMWF, UK Met, and since so many of you seem to be using Predict Wind, I've used both of their models, their version of GFS and their version of ECMWF. And again, I have to emphasize that I have no idea what they do with these models, mainly because I've been given no information even after asking. So, but because you're using them, I thought I'd include it in this. What it boils down to is that they all, almost every single one of them, are in general agreement with your boat reports. There are exceptions. We've sent some emails to those boats where things just didn't compute, but that happens. It could be just inputting the wrong number or letter in the wind, and we get a bad report. But apart from just a couple of those, it pretty much works out well. Now the other thing that I am doing is I'm picking up, I'm establishing 3 positions in the Southwest Pacific, and I've started this on Tuesday, and I've looked at the winds, in other words, the direction and the strength for each of the models that I said, GFS, EC, UK, PWG, PWE, and I have looked at what they've said the winds are going to be for that day, Tuesday, and then I've looked at what they say they're going to be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And the idea behind this exercise is to see how consistent. So in other words, what they said it is going to happen on Friday, what is it really going to say when Friday comes? In other words, does the model remain consistent, or have they changed their mind? So come tomorrow, I'll have that completed. But a few of the things that are pretty clear on this. So in general, out to 3 days, virtually all of those models I mentioned are in the same ballpark. Differences start at about 4 days when we get into the Predict Wind models. They're PWE and PWG. They start to deviate from their parent models, which would be EC and GFS. So that's about 4 days for Predict Wind, whereas just the plain ordinary GFS model and the EC models they're pretty consistent out to 5 to 6 days. So there's very little variation there. And looking at the wind arrows now, where you have a feather basically. So in other words, say we have a feather that's showing 20 knots. So in other words, it's got a straight line and two perpendicular lines that would indicate 20 knots. Now, where is that 20 knots? What I'm seeing is that basically it's at the point of the arrow or the feather. So it's not along the whole thing, it's right at the point. And that's what I've established. And how I've established that is by looking at color graduations, and in some cases I'm able to get the models, particularly on EC and GFS, where I could actually move the pointer and see how the wind varies along the length of the arrow itself. So that's an interesting thing for you. Now normally on those arrows we say to use plus or minus 5 knots, just in general, for whatever the feather says. So if it's a 20 knot feather, we say 15 to 25, somewhere in between. But what I'm seeing in this analysis is that using about 3 knots, plus or minus 3 knots, seems to be working just fine. Now, it is vital when you're looking, when you're getting your grids and so forth at sea, is to get isobars along with the feathers. Don't just get a report that shows feathers and no isobars. And this is because the isobars are not linear. They're wider in some areas than another. And this could be a distance of only a few miles. And that's the reason why you could have X speed and another yacht that's within 20 or 30 miles of you has got Y speed. So that's the reason for that. So in order to get a better feel for this, what you want to do is to ideally get the isobars, the feather of course, and a color graduation scale for the wind speed. In other words, a wind arrow can cross 2 or 3 color graduations. So, and the wind speed is different for each color graduation, obviously. That's why we do it. And so you're able to see on that example of that 20 knot arrow, at the point that color graduation could say 20, but where the little feather parts of it are, it could say 15 as an example. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, SailMail does offer this feature when you're getting your grid. So very useful to have that color graduation in addition to the wind speed arrow. The other interesting thing is if you have access to the internet, Windy, and everybody I think knows what the Windy site is. That's very useful to see the wind streams, and you can visualize the flow changes because of that. Actually, the wind direction and the speed changes become very obvious because of the color scales that they use. So not only do they show the wind flow with their little dashes, if you will, but they show color graduation, so you can see in better detail where the wind changes are going to be. And troughing conditions. This last month or so, we've had a lot of troughs out there, a lot of bands of cloud and so forth. The models are not going to pick up the wind accurately in these conditions. So you could get your grids in, and when you get a squall, that grid is not going to pick it up. It's impossible to use the accuracy that you think you want. I don't think it's that important to be so precise on the wind, but I think a general idea will suffice. So keep that in mind when you have a lot of cloud, a trough, and particularly a front. The models are just not going to do it. So anyway, I've got one more day to go on my model comparison, and when I finish up with that, probably Monday, I'll give you a heads up on that, what I found out. So hopefully this was useful to you. And again, I appreciate your cooperation in all of this. And I'll pass it over to the chief.
Yeah, just on that one, I've got my sail docs actually on here at the moment looking at it. Just a reminder that when you are looking at it, make sure you've set the surface wind color to the rainbow. That's, when you set up to look at your grids and you click on that wind barb along the top and go to surface wind. I have spacing of 1 and size of 1, but you still get the solid line for the 1020 isobar line. But make sure the surface wind is coloured, the multicolour, because it's so easy then to look at what's going on with the wind, and you can sort of see little bits that are in different colours that you wouldn't necessarily pick up by just looking at it, because they would all say 10 knots, and I'm looking at one at the moment inside this high of 1024 that I'm looking at, and this is not current, I might add. They've got all the same wind strength, but you can see different colours, so you can see where it's slightly different within that band. So really useful to set your surface wind on the rainbow colour. And as I mentioned, I've got the surface pressure. I think I made an error a minute ago. I've got spacing of 4 and width 1, but you still get that solid line on 1020. So there is a paper on that on the website, ghradio.co.nz, where we discuss in full our recommendations anyway, which comply with Sergio's recommendations on Sperari, as to how to order and then view the grids, because you can get an awful lot out of viewing if you adjust the viewing parameters. All right, is there anybody else? We're a bit late today, but is there anybody else? Go ahead, Ron. Oh, see if you can pick them up.
They were before big radio problems. He was trying to check it out.
Yeah, their report came in, so they've still got their email working. Well, it came in yesterday, I saw. So I'm just scrolling down to see where they were. I hadn't heard from them for a while, so maybe here we are, KTM2, they were at 31 and 177 East. So all well on board at that stage, so hopefully it's just the radio. Thanks, Ron. You're still coming in pretty well, actually, so that's good. All right, that sounds as if there's any, we've wrapped things up for the day. I shall get these on the YIT site, and we will be back again tomorrow for the last day for 2 days. Just don't forget that we are not on the radio on Saturday, folks. So cheers, everybody. Keep enjoying those nice passage conditions and that lovely big moon, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. The frequency is yours to use. Cheers all. Oh, sorry about that. What was, I just didn't quite catch that. Go ahead again. Oh, I see. Oh, all right. Oh, well, that explains that. I'll make a note of that. All right, so we'll have to rely on you for that. Boy, we'll definitely get you on the payroll. Very useful sitting there enjoying Kavala. All right, thanks, Ron, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Cheers. I actually got confused on the latitude. Could you repeat the latitude, Ron? Yep, got all that. It was just the degrees of latitude that I was short of. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, I wonder what's wrong with the radio, because every now and again I got something quite clear. It's just lack of power. So unless they're just not connected well to the antenna, or the tuner's not working or something. But anyway, that's good that you were able to copy them. All right, thanks, Ron. Enjoy the day. Thanks for the help. Cheers. Boy, you're not very strong this morning, Chris, but I recognise the voice. Trigger, go ahead. Well, it's definitely a propagation problem, because you are normally really good, and I'm just going to the space weather to see if they are. Oh yes, there is a geomagnetic warning, folks. So increased geomagnetic activity due to a coronal pole high-speed wind stream. So that might be affecting things a little bit here, but I cannot copy you, Chris. So I'm not going to be able to hear what your pearls of wisdom are. Over.
Yeah, go ahead. Roger. Except if they replace the down wire on the antenna, they're going to redo it again.
Yeah, it sounds like they will need to, because normally he has an excellent signal, and you're booming in. So, yep, I'll give you something to do today, Chris. So definitely needs more work. Thanks, Ron.
Roger.
Let's get out of here.
Okay.